Good morning. I'm Pastor Allen. Today is Thursday, September 10th, and we are looking at Matthew's Gospel, chapter 24, verses 15 through 22, which talks about perilous times or the Great Tribulation. So when you see standing in the holy place the abomination that causes desolation, spoken of through the prophet Daniel, let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let no one on the housetop go back to take anything out of the house. Let no one in the field go back to get their cloak. How dreadful it will be in those days for pregnant women and nursing mothers. Pray that your flight will not take place in winter or on the Sabbath. For then there will be great distress, unequaled from the beginning of the world until now, and never to be equaled again. If those days had not been cut short, no one would survive. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be shortened. This is one of those passages that, when I read it, verse 15, I kind of look at it and just skip over and keep going, because when you see standing in the holy place the abomination that causes desolation, you're like, what does that mean? I don't understand that. It's mentioned a couple other times in the New Testament, but you're not quite sure what Jesus is talking about and how that applies to us. But see, when we hear this, when we read this, it's easy for us to just think, well, okay, let's go on. We don't understand. But the people who Jesus was speaking to and the first people who read this understood this very well. They knew exactly what Jesus was talking about. And that's one of the things about the Bible that confuses us, because when we hear stuff and when we read stuff, in the times that it was written, in the times that Jesus spoke them, the people clearly understood what he was saying. We have to do a little bit more research to find out and to figure out the background and the culture in order for us to apply it to our lives. What he was referring to is Old Testament prophecies about the coming tribulation, the coming end times, is found in the book of Daniel. And in Daniel chapter 9, verse 27, it says, "He will confirm a covenant with many for 1 7. In the middle of the 7, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering. And at the temple, he will set up an abomination that causes desolation, until the end that is decreed is poured out on him." The 7 is a time period. And then Daniel chapter 11, verse 31. "His armed forces will rise up to desecrate the temple fortress and will abolish the daily sacrifice. Then they will set up the abomination that causes desolation." Here's the exact words that Jesus used, and that's found in Daniel chapter 11, verse 31. And then Daniel chapter 12, verse 11. "From the time that the daily sacrifice is abolished and the abomination that causes desolation is set up, there will be 1,290 days. Okay, so we're talking about the end times, things that are going to happen, and Jesus is telling us these things are coming. And they're slightly veiled, but the people who heard Jesus speaking knew exactly. Now, some people will take the 1-7, the time period of 7 years, and the 1,290 days and try to set a date. And like I said earlier, we're not to do that. God says don't do that. Only he knows the times that all of this will start to take place. He will set things in motion when that happens. But still, some people try. The best thing to do if somebody sets a date and says, well, the world's going to end in whatever year, like they've done in the past, ignore them. Number one, they're wrong. And number two, they're going against what the Bible says. Okay, verse 16. Then those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. So what's coming is not going to be good. Flee to the mountains. And then Jesus gives us more information. Let no one on the housetop go down to take anything out of the house. That's important. You know, fires. Your house catches on fire, you leave. You leave everything behind, you get out. You save yourselves. And we always hear newspaper stories about somebody who went back into a burning house to try and save a pet. And pets are important, but they tried to save a pet, or they went back into the burning building and end up being killed. Or an airplane crash. If you get into an airplane crash, they say just go, get out of the plane. You got these chutes, and slides. You jump out and you go. You don't reach up to your bin and say, "Well, I need my suitcase," because it's not important at that time. The only thing that's important is your survival. And then verse 18, let no one go back to get their cloak. Again, ignore the weather. Flee. You can get clothes later. The important thing is your survival. And then verse 19, how dreadful or terrible it will be in those days for pregnant women and nursing mothers. You know, pregnant women are not comfortable. Don't move fast. Same thing with nursing mothers. They have things that they need to take care of that are important. While they're fleeing, it's not going to be easy. And then verse 20, pray that your flight will not take place in winter on the Sabbath. Winter is difficult travel. We know that up here in Northeast Ohio. It is difficult to travel in the winter. Even though they salt the roads and plow the roads, it's still difficult travel. Also, on the Sabbath, the law and the Pharisees said you can't do any travel. You could only travel less than a mile. And so you'd have the added burden of the Pharisees trying to stop you, and the Old Testament law says don't do work. So some people, what will happen is some people will hesitate, and if they do, then they will perish. Verse 21, for there will be great distress, unequaled from the beginning of the world until now, and never to be equaled again. Jesus is warning us, the people then, that a time of great distress is coming. You can count on it. It's guaranteed. It is coming. And Jesus is giving warning about it. And it's unequaled, or something that has never happened since the creation of the world. Until now. Until it happens. And then Jesus says, once it happens, it will never happen again. Bottom line, what's coming is going to be bad. And then verse 22, if those days had not been cut short, no one would survive. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be shortened. And in the midst of all this trouble, tribulation, all this bad news, there's good news. Those coming days will be cut short. But the elect, the chosen, the selected, the receivers of special privilege, that's us believers, or Christ followers, those days are going to be cut short. And God is going to shorten the coming days of tribulation for the elect, for the chosen ones, for the receivers of special privilege. So listen and hear the warnings in verses 17, 18, and 19. Listen to what he's saying. And prepare yourselves by following Jesus in faith and trusting in him only, because He will not let you down. Have a great day. Talk to you tomorrow.